Let's think about what we do when we divide. What a question are we asking ourselves? So what is 10 divided by 2? What many people think of, or the first thing we think of, is that we have 10 things. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10 things. And it's divided by 2. So it's actually 1, 2, 3. It's actually divided into 2 groups. And so we now have 2 separate groups. And the question is then, how many items are in each group? So if it's been separated out now so that there are 2 groups, we can ask the question, how many are in each of the groups? And the answer to that is 5. So therefore, 10 divided into 2 equal groups means that each group will have 5 in it. A second way of looking at this problem as 10 divided by 2, we could say if 10 is divided into groups of 2, then how many groups will there be? So if we divided them into groups of 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means that we'll end up with 5 groups of 2. So the answer to 10 divided by 2 is going to be 5. And this thinking, if 10 is divided into groups of 2, how many groups will there be? This is the thinking that we need to use. This is the way we need to think about dividing when we're going to be dividing by fractions. So when we're thinking of the question, what is 10 divided by a half, we need to consider that if we have 10 divided into groups of a half, size of half, how many groups will there be? And then we can work out the answer. So looking at the blocks, here are our 10. They're divided into groups of size a half. So therefore, this is one whole, and so we have to divide them into groups of size a half. So each one of those one wholes has to be split, and these are our new groupings. And then we can count how many of those groups we have. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So we have 20 groups of size a half. And therefore, 10 divided by a half is equal to 20. 10 divided into groups of a half means that we'll now have 20 of them. We may not want to draw a picture each side, so let's think of how we might be able to do this with a calculation. 10 divided by a half is going to give us a 20. We could also have a similar calculation which will also give us 20, because if we have 10 and it's divided by a half, and that gives us 20, what else could we do to 10 to make us have the answer of 20? Rather than dividing by a half, we could actually do the similar calculation of multiplying by 2, or multiplying by 2 over 1. So the calculation, if I start off with 10 and I divide it by a half, it's going to give us the same answer as if I did 10 multiplied by 2 over 1. And in fact, when we do divisions, we're not actually going to do a division sum, we're going to change it to an equivalent multiplication sum. So if we're going to do this example, we want to say, what is 30 divided by a quarter? In other words, if I had divided up 30 into pieces that were the size of a quarter, how many would there be? Rather than drawing a diagram, I can do a calculation. So 30 divided by a quarter, we're not going to do a division sum, we're going to change it and do an equivalent multiplication sum. So rather than dividing by a quarter, we're going to do the equivalent multiplication. So we're going to start off with our 30, and what are we going to do with it? We're not going to now divide it by a quarter, we're going to do the equivalent calculation, which will give us the same answer. We're going to multiply it by 4 over 1. When we're multiplying numbers together, 30 times 4 over 1, this 30 needs to become a fraction, so that can be just over 1 here. And then when we multiply, don't forget we multiply the numerators together, 30 times 4. We multiply the denominators together, 1 times 1. We check to see if there are any common highest factors so I can simplify that problem. There doesn't appear to be. 30 times 4 is 120 over 1 times 1, which is 1. So the answer will be 120. So in this example, before I can do any calculation, my mixed number has to become an improper fraction. So we need to change this before we can do anything else. So we're going to change it into thirds, because this is thirds here. So we have a number of thirds. 1 whole is the same as 3 thirds. 1 times 3, that's 3 thirds, plus our extra 2. So in other words, 1 2 thirds is the same as 5 thirds. And then 5 thirds is going to be divided by 2 over 5. However, we can't do division when we're using fractions. We're going to change it to an equivalent multiplication. So when we start off with our 5/3, now we're not going to divide it by 2 over 5. We're going to multiply it by what's called the reciprocal. So the reciprocal is when we flip the numerator and the denominator. So instead of 2 over 5, it's going to be 5 over 2. Okay, let's now continue with our sum. We can do 5 times 5 over 3 times 2. Do we have anything we can simplify there? We don't. So we end up with 5 times 5 is 25 over 3 times 2, which is 6. That's an improper fraction. We now need to change it to a mixed number by doing the division. Remember that this line here is just like a divided. So how many times does 6 go into 25? Well, 6 times 4 makes 24, so that's 4. And there's 1 left over, so remainder 1, which is the same as saying 4 and 1/6, because we were dividing by 6 in the first instance.